Hello and welcome to the Sixth Pillar Podcast, hosted by Chief Neil Gang and proudly produced by Techne Innovations. I'm Shalene Finstad, CXO at Techne Innovations, and for today's episode number 4, I'm honored to introduce you to our very special guest, Bob Chapman. Recently named the Tharseo CEO of the Year by the Society of Human Resource Management, the number 3 CEO in the world by Inc., and the leading social capital CEO by International Business Times, Bob Chapman is very intentional about building a better world. Currently, Bob is CEO of Barry Waymiller, a $3.6 billion capital equipment firm that he transformed by applying a unique blend of strategy and culture to a struggling $20 million business. Let's jump right into discovering the secrets to truly human leadership, inspired by his best-selling book, Everybody Matters, The Extraordinary Power of Caring for Your People Like Family. Chief Gang, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much, Shalene. I am so excited for this episode. I know I say that for every episode, and I am, but this gentleman that we're going to be speaking with today is truly profoundly impacted my thoughts on leadership, particularly for this profession. I want to welcome everybody to the Sixth Pillar Podcast. Thank you to the team at Techne Innovations, of course, our technical director and producer, Matt Krell. And I have to say something about our new CXO, our Chief Experience Officer, Shalene Finstad. I am so excited that she is joining our team. She's been a tremendous friend and advocate of mine for a long time, and I could not be happier about partnering with her and her joining our team today. So welcome to the Sixth Pillar family. This is where we have unfiltered conversations about leadership and organizational wellness, absent of those typical political buzzwords and BS that we all hear. And people always ask, what is the Sixth Pillar podcast? Well, the Sixth Pillar is from the 21st century policing model, which is officer wellness and resiliency. And that's really what our topic's about, taking care of each other, making sure our officers are safe, certainly building out resiliency. As people know, I am a man of faith, and I start every single session with a Bible verse, and this one's very fitting. It's 1 Peter 4:10, and it's about serving others. And that's what Bob Chapman's been doing for years. So it reads, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. I could not be more happy to welcome to our podcast today, Mr. Bob Chapman. Bob, welcome. How are you?
Neil, I look forward to the opportunity to kind of continue our dialogue that we began a couple of years ago with Simon. So I look forward to this.
Yeah. So I have to share a little bit of a foundation of how I met Bob. So my personal journey led to this blessing with crossing paths with Bob. I was at this intersection of organizational wellness going around the country speaking since about 2009. And somewhere along the line, I stopped and I realized that leadership and organizational wellness has to be merged. They have to be together. Without that, you cannot have success. So one has to have the other. I started looking about leadership outside of our organization. I know in policing, typically we look at the militaristic leaders, and they're great leaders to read books from. And I started looking outside, looking at CEOs of business. That's kind of where this led me to Bob. And Simon Sinek's book features Barry Waymiller and talks about Bob and the culture that they've created. And I started researching who Bob was and came to a podcast where Simon and Bob are just talking about leadership. I'm telling you right now, I had to stop my car because I was actually listening so intently. And what Bob was saying, it's not just a different sound, but his words were different and it was resonating with me so deeply. I just took a chance. And what I did is I sent Bob a LinkedIn message. I actually have it here, Bob. I want to read it. It was August 15th of 2022. And I says, hello, Bob. My name is Neil Gang, and I'm a police chief out here in California. I'm an advocate for organizational wellness, and I am the CPCA Officer Wellness Committee chairperson. The need to take care of our people is so important right now, and I would love to touch base with you to gain some more insight into your work. I love your work with Simon Sinek, and you inspire me to bring these concepts into the policing profession, which is so needed right now. Stay well. I know it's a long shot, but I hope to hear back from you. Now, do you think I ever thought I would hear back from anybody from his business? Within 24 hours, I received an email back. And that led me to an opportunity where Bob actually invited me to a Zoom call with him that was supposed to be 15 minutes. I think it lasted an hour, Bob. So talk to us a little bit, Bob, about your truly human leadership concept and how this all kind of transformed you and your corporation.
Well, Neil, you started off with the Bible verse, and that led me to share with you that what we're going to talk about, what I'm going to share with you. I believe God has blessed us with. I'm a ordinary guy from North St. Louis with a public education, and I probably have an average level of intelligence. But I believe some higher power is blessed with this message that could heal the brokenness in this world. And I feel called to share it in every opportunity I have. And the simple way to describe it is the lens through which I was taught in education, the lens through which I entered the business profession. I was a nice guy with a good personality, but I saw people as functions. I saw them as engineers, accountants, policemen, taxi cab drivers. I saw people through the lens that I was kind of educating experience as functions. And one day, one of the revelations that was brought to me in a wedding, when I was watching two young people join together in marriage, the lens through which I saw people in the world was changed, reversed. And I saw people not as functions, engineers, accountants, receptionists, etc. I saw them as somebody's precious child. I realized that the way I treated them would profoundly impact their life. So that change in my lens that occurred through revelation led me to say that what we need in this world is we need to learn to care for others as we would want our own children cared for. And I use the word care, not love intentionally, because I think care, everybody can embrace the idea that we need to learn to care for others, especially in the world of conflict we have today, whether it's with policemen and the community, whether it's with politicians between liberals and Democrats. We have a world where people simply don't know how to care for others, which led me to write the book. But that's the revelations that led me to this position of we need to learn to care for others. And as the book's title says, everybody matters.
Thank you. I know I mentioned earlier that I had to stop my car. Well, I stopped my car because I was taking notes on this podcast and all the things you were saying. And it's like, okay, one or two things hit me. And I'm like, this is great. And two and three. And I'm like, I'm not going to remember all this. I'm texting my cell phone, my work cell phone. So I get these notes. So I finally just pulled over and I listened for the next hour. And honestly, I just couldn't get enough and I had to reach out to you. You talk a little bit about this profound responsibility of leadership of those we have a privilege to lead. I'm not sure there's a lot of policing leaders that understand that it's actually a privilege to lead. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. What we realized is I always thought, I remember in business school, I took management classes, got a management degree, and then I got a job in management. So I thought I was supposed to manage people, whether you're managing a police department or managing a business or a retail store. And I thought managing was kind of telling people what to do. Okay. That's was implied by my education. And first part of my career, that's what I did. One day I realized that you can't manage anybody and nobody wants to be managed. We need leaders, coaches, and mentors, people but I was never taught to inspire people. I was never taught to care for people. I was taught to use people to achieve our organizational goals. But again, that lens reversal, when I realized that the people who work under my span of care are not, functions. They are somebody's precious child who simply wants to know they matter, which led us to these revelations. So the lens through which we see other people. So again, realizing that we've been blessed with a message from some higher power, we realized one day that what happens if something happens to me? Will this die with me? I said, I can't let this blessing that we've been given by some higher power lead with me. So we created a university to teach people how to go from managing people to inspiring and caring for people. So we created a university to try and keep disciples who would carry this on beyond my time. So we start healing this brokenness. And certainly in policemen, you're seeing this, or we're seeing it in the news every day, this brokenness we have in the world. And so we began this journey to really try to profoundly change the way we lead. And again, we teach, and this is important, we teach three things to transform managers into leaders, to seeing people's head count, to see them as somebody's precious child. We teach empathetic listening, not listening to judge, not listening to debate, but listening to validate the worth of the person you're interacting with. Because I thought when you cared for people, you went over and talked to them. It turns out when you care for somebody, you go over to listen to them without judgment, simply to be present and validate their worth. The second thing we teach, which I think is incredibly important, Cynthia and I raised 6 kids. One of the things we learned, if you don't spend 5 times more catching them doing things right, it's difficult for them to deal with things that you feel they could do better. I found adults are the same way. Okay. And so we taught recognition and celebration. How do you let people know they matter in thoughtful, timely, appropriate ways? Not that a boy, great job, 5 years anniversary, but catching people doing things right in thoughtful, timely way, which is profound. The capstone course was culture of service, seizing the opportunity to serve others. And Neil, I want to add this. So we realized we'd been blessed with a transformative opportunity for this country to heal this poverty of dignity we have. And we began taking it out in our community. I live in Aspen, Colorado. There were several Aspen police officers at the graduation event of our 3-day class and sitting by 2 police officers. And again, given all the controversy we've had in our country about policing and issues of leadership and policing, I said to these 2 very fine police officers who just completed our 3-day class, how did this class impact you? I'm just curious. And they said, Mr. Chapman, we take hundreds of hours to learn how to enforce the law, but we are never taught how to deal with normal people. This class is the most important class I have ever taken to serve my community through my policing opportunity. And that was profound because they gave us examples of how they dealt with some domestic issues that they were called into, how the reaction of some people on getting a speeding ticket when they listened instead of judged. So again, I was profoundly touched by the opportunity to work with policing. As you know, we worked with the Boulder Police, this Colorado University Boulder Police Force, and it affected the way Doreen led her team as a leader, with trust and respect and dignity. Because again, how can policemen go out in the community and be of value to the community if they don't feel valued by their leader, by their organization? The opportunity to touch your profession has been profoundly meaningful to me. And the feedback we've had from everybody has been profound. It's just part of healing this poverty of dignity we have in the world. People don't feel valued. They feel used.
I mean, so many great words there. A lot of takeaways for leaders that are listening today. I do have to share, you caught Bob saying that they raised 6 kids. Something that I know a little bit about Bob is that a funny anecdote is that he's never seen The Wizard of Oz. So I keep telling him I'm going to send him that movie. He told me I don't have time. I'm raising 6 kids. I'd imagine, Bob, you probably didn't have time to watch that movie. It's a long movie. So pretty funny anecdote with that. Bob, you talked a little bit about the training, and I have to tell people that you have a foundation that goes out to communities and teaches a class called Our Community Listens. Well, Bob's work and the work that they're doing was so profound to me that we brought them into our city in Pinole and had our law enforcement officers go through that. And the class was amazing. You came in one way and you left another way. I'm just out there to say, if you have not had the opportunity to bring this training into your community, it's something you should look at. Not only that, but then I became the interim city manager and I said, okay, I'm looking at the entire organization through a different lens. And we brought it into our department head staff. And they also had the same response. So in the last 2 years, we've had your foundation come out twice. It's been very impactful. And I can't thank your team and what they're doing with that class. So just something, if you're out there looking for a class to come in, that's going to be meaningful, that's outside the scope of the traditional policing type of environment, then you should look into this class.
Neil, it is a foundational skill that everybody needs to have, whether at home or at work, whether you're a policeman, a fireman, a city manager, a nurse, a teacher. What we teach, what we feel blessed with is human skills that combined with professional skills allow us to carry out our professional responsibility with compassion and dignity and humility. And the feedback, even in the policing force, we've got 41 teachers around the country teaching these classes. We've taught so far 13,000 people in every part of this country. and it is growing every day in terms of learning how to care for others through the skills, empathetic listening. And again, I suspect, Neil, in the classes classes you talked about, like the hundreds and hundreds we have taught, that most people talked about how it affected their personal life. Okay. Because that's where our greatest passion is, with our personal life. Obviously, our professional life is very important. But when people take this class all over the country, okay, all over the country, including Simon, the first thing they talk about is how it affects their personal life. And obviously, you want to be a good steward of those people you have the privilege of leading. Anything you can do in the work environment to send them home feeling valued and to treat their spouse and their children better will help us heal these communities in which all of your policing serve. Okay. What you're seeing through policing is the brokenness that we are seeing in this country. And what we're talking about is the healing power of learning to care for others.
Great points. One of the things I was going to say is that most of the people that came back after that class said, I learned so much about myself, and it's really enhanced my personal relationships. It's just so meaningful. It's just so meaningful because we look into our profession and we, like you said, hundreds of hours maybe on how to be a supervisor, quote unquote, not leadership, how to enforce laws. How many classes have taught anybody how to be an empathetic listener? Probably zero. That's not in the curriculum, but yet that's what we do most often. That's what we have to do most proficiently if we want to lead successful relationships. So it's so important. One of the things that really resonated with me is that people know that I'm a man of faith, that you are also a man of faith. You tell a story about how you sat in church one afternoon on a Sunday and you watched how people's lives were being changed within that 1 hour time and that 1 hour service. Then you started thinking to yourself, oh, we have our people for 40 hours a work week. Imagine the impacts that good leaders could have on someone's life, not just their careers. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Episcopalian, the rector of our church, was my mentor. Ed Salmon, a phenomenal gentleman of wisdom. Loved his sermons and the inspiration it gave me. But one day, as you mentioned, I was sitting in the pew next to Cynthia. As the service ended, I looked to Cynthia and I said, Cynthia, Ed has only got us for 1 hour a week. At Barry Wehmiller, we have people in our care for 40 hours a week. We are 40 times more powerful than our faith to heal this brokenness in the world if we simply teach people how to care for each other. As I walked out of the building that day, I said, in my case, business could be the most powerful force for good in the world if we simply knew how to care for the people we have the privilege of leading. I thought leadership was a job. Leadership is a privilege, just like parenting is a privilege. In your case, Neil, how could policemen possibly serve their community if they don't know how to listen with empathy and understanding? Seriously, I think where I live in Aspen, Colorado, 2/3 of the police officers have taken our class, and it's been profound. The stories, again, are amazing. And I gave a case of a domestic issue, and the mother had called the police because the son had stolen the car. Well, the policeman would come out and normally just address the stolen car, get the car. But instead, because of the skill, he sat down and listened to this mother talk about the loss of her husband, what it's meant to her, and was able to put in context the son behaving the way he did. He approached it totally differently. This is a story they told us after they took the class. So I would think for your profession, as you serve our communities, A, you want the people under your leadership to feel valued so they go home and have healthy lives with their family and children. And B, as you interact with other families in the community, which you do every day in many ways, quite often in conflict, how do you go into every situation, not in judgment, but with the skill to understand and listen and validate? A dramatically different approach to taking your professional skills and serving the communities that you're a part of, that you want to be a positive force in that community.
For the listeners out there, the reason why I thought this message was so important that Bob share, so everybody can hear what I believe when we talk about reimaging policing, not the woke definition that's out there about reimaging and reimagining policing. That's a bunch of BS, and we all know that. But we do have to make some changes. What Bob's sharing is ways for us to make change in leadership and how we can profoundly change our profession. There's a quote that I always speak about after talking with Bob, and I speak about it when I talk about leadership and this infusion of leadership and organizational wellness. It is, what if businesses or organizations in general could be a source of healing in the world by embracing the profound responsibility of leadership of those we have a privilege to lead? That's profound, Bob. It's very profound. It's different language. It's a different impact than what we've heard in our profession all these years. And I have to thank you for giving and providing a different lens of leadership, which is so needed in our profession right now.
Yeah, because that lens, well, the other interesting thing, Neil, since you've been through the class, that I want your listeners to hear, I understand we're born with different physical characteristics. I understand we're born with different capabilities, but I never understood that we're born with different personalities. Okay. And the DISC profile that you took and your colleagues took when they take the class is kind of an x-ray of your personality. Okay. As you know, there's 4 distinct types of personalities in this DISC profile. That it's amazing from people to actually see their personality. In our school system, we teach people to speak and debate. I always thought that facts were facts. Okay. I thought the way I saw the world, and I would learn in school to debate, the way you see it, Neil, is wrong, and the way I see it is right. What I learned through that class is that personality that you're born with creates a lens through which you experience the world, a unique lens. That's why 2 people in exactly the same situation can see it entirely differently. They didn't choose to see it differently. The lens through which they were blessed with their personality causes them to see the world through the lens that they were born with. And when you realize that, you say, because we have a world, I'm right and you're wrong. We see it every day in the news. We see it in our political system. We see it between our countries. But you never see people say, help me understand how you see it. Okay. Because I know you see it possibly uniquely different than I do. It's not that I'm right and you're wrong. I want to understand how you see it. And so if you all are experiencing factual situations that you're called into all the time, and people see things differently, okay, they don't choose to do that. It is shaped by the personality they have. That's what we've learned in the 13,000 people that have taken this class. The beauty is that, and you know this because you did it, when you take the class and you sit in graduation, people say, I met the most wonderful group of people. Why? Because when you see deeper into people than their color of their skin, their height, their weight, their intelligence, et cetera, you see that the beauty in everybody. And when you listen to people, you validate their worth and you heal this divide we have among the way people see the world, whether it's abortion or taxes or various laws. And so, world you all experience of conflict every day is because we don't know how to listen. We don't know how to understand that people see things differently. And I think my hope is that if your profession fully embraces this, which I am encouraged that they will, and that we actually bring it into education, policing education, that we give them these human skills along with the professional skills, that they will serve the community and have healthier families. I was told by Doreen that the divorce rate in policing is one of the highest of any professions. Okay. So as a leader in your profession, wouldn't you like those in your span of care to live lives of meaning and purpose with healthy family lives and personal lives and raise kids? If we have the stress of that work and we don't know how to listen and we don't know how to be good leaders, how can we go out and serve the community if we don't feel cared for ourselves? So it starts with you, the leader, looking at the people you have the privilege of leading as somebody's precious child who simply wants to know they matter. And when you give them the tools that we talked about, you will give them a chance to live life fully in service of others and have meaningful relationships where we don't judge others, we understand others.
It's funny that you talked about divorce in our profession. There's a slide in my presentation where we talk about some of the factors that lead up to that people, die by suicide. And one of the things we talk about is divorce. I always say, raise your hand if you haven't had a starter spouse, right, in our profession. And everybody's hand goes up, right? So I think it's important that It's about leadership. It's about creating those relationships, not just at work, but at home. That's so important. And I don't want to ruin it for the people that are going to take the class, but when you get in there and you talk about the disc, when you first get in there and you're actually sitting in where your disc profile comes out, you start looking at people and go, oh, that's the reason why, John is like that, or that's the reason why, Steve acts that way. And you sit there and you go, it all makes sense. It all makes sense. Like in this last class, we had all our finance people and the accountants were on one side of the room. And then of course, all our black and white people were on the other side of the room. So it just worked out very, very interesting. It's an amusing class. It's a good 3-day class. And I encourage people to take that class. One of the things that's happening now around our profession, it's real this talk of culture. It's almost like a buzzword. If you use that in a title, you're getting these speaking engagements. Use it in a title, you get a presentation accepted for the next summit. But let's talk a little bit about culture. And if you have any tips for leaders that are caring for their people, they want to make a change. Do we have tips for them to help them change the culture in their organizations?
Well, as I said, it starts with how you see the people you have the privilege of leading. Do you see them as police officers, staff, or do you see them as somebody's precious child that simply wants to know they matter? Because it starts there. You cannot ask them to go out and serve the community if they don't feel served themselves. Nurses in hospitals, if they don't feel cared for, can they care for the patients that they serve? One of the things I say all the time in my speeches is the bad news about COVID, it was highly contagious. The good news about caring, it's even more contagious than COVID. So from a police officer standpoint, my hope is if the leaders of policing say, look at what is my responsibility? Okay. Is it to enforce the laws in this community, or is it to be a good steward through our role of this community and go out and be a positive force, not a law enforcement force? Okay. Law enforcement is not very inspirational. Creating a community where people feel cared for and that we have the capacity to listen. Remember, I told you in Aspen, a lady was pulled over for speeding and a police officer was talking to her about the speeding. And all of a sudden she said, did you take that listening class? And he said, yeah. How would you know? She said, the way you're talking to me, I don't ever want to speed again. Okay. I mean, they tell us these stories, but it starts internally. If people don't feel cared for, you can't ask them to go out into the community and care for others. It starts with the leaders. And we have listening sessions. Doreen told me that she had a listening session at the CU with the campus police to talk to them about what we're trying to do. What came out is that there was a room, a supply room, whatever, where you got certain things. I can't remember what it was, but it was kept locked. She said, and the police officer said, these are things we need and we have to go get keys and permission. You're locked. You don't trust us. You don't even trust us. She's never occurred to her that she didn't trust him. But the message they got is we don't trust. And so you're the police officers going out in the community and we don't trust you. So some simple little things like that, Neil, sitting down with your team and making sure they feel cared for, that you listen to them. You don't debate what they say. You listen to what they say. And you say, my main goal is that you all feel respected and cared for in the time that you're in our care, so that as you go out to serve our community or you go out to be a leader in your home, you do with the foundation that you spent 40, 60 hours a week, whatever it was, in an environment where you felt valued. Because again, 88% of all people in this country, those people you're dealing with in the community, whether they're accountants or receptionists or hotel clerks, these people work for companies that don't care for them. So you're dealing with people who don't feel cared for. The amount of anxiety, depression, suicide in every part of our society is at kids, adult, male, is at an epidemic level because we have a world where we don't know how to care for each other. So if we all go out and do our job, is that our job simply to enforce the law, or is it to be a positive force for understanding and caring in our community? So I think even elevating the purpose of your professional role in a community beyond, because again, if our job is to enforce the law, that is the lowest level I think I can imagine to define what you do. Be a positive force in our community where we genuinely care for the people we have the privilege of serving, and we have the skills to go into situations and understand and validate the worth of people. Dramatically different professional roles, and your team members will go home at night and have better marriages, raise better kids, and you could be a symbol of hope for our communities. So again, that's why Simon's very focused on policing. That's why we in our Chapman Foundation are very focused on policing, because we want to elevate your role, the purpose you serve in our community, from enforcing the laws to creating a positive force for caring in our community within your particular skill. Whether it's the Board of Aldermen, whether it's the fire department, we're working all over cities and organizations to embrace the profound impact they could make in the community beyond enforcing the laws.
So Bob's giving us a lot of tips, a lot of insight on how we can change the culture as leaders out in this profession. And here's one of the things we have to get over first. First is we have to get over the big lie that recruitment and retention is the biggest issue in our profession. It's not. That's been an issue for quite some time. In fact, if you Google it, you'll probably see about 2018, they were talking about that as a problem. The biggest challenge was leadership. And that's why bringing Bob on and sharing those type of concepts and giving us insight on how to lead, how to change will help this profession. They leave organization leadership before they leave organizations. Over time, I said that they leave the leaders of an organization before they leave an organization typically. So very, very important. I want to change gears a little bit on you, Bob. And there's something out there now. It seems like one of the biggest controversies now in the business leadership world is when we start talking about family, and calling our team a family is some sort of manipulation. And it's funny because I just spoke to a group of leaders, policing leaders at a summit. I said, yeah, I talked about family. And he goes, oh, those people aren't our family. I go, well, we spend more time with the people, and we certainly probably know a little bit more about our employees if you care about them. I said, yeah, I do refer to them as family. He goes, they're not family. They're coworkers to me. I go, okay, well, we got into a little bit of debate, and I don't want to get into it here, but talk a little bit about that. Now, there is, like I said, the controversy out there that work is not family. Talk to me about your thoughts on that.
So, Neil, we didn't start by saying work is family. What happened was that it really peaked when General Flynn, who wrote the foreword to Simon Sinek's book called Leaders Eat Last, which was his experience between the military, and Simon had met me and experienced Barry Wehmler. And the second book he wrote after he wrote Start With Why was Leaders Eat Last. Okay. And it has nothing to do with eating. It's how you see the people in your care. So General Flynn, really Leaders Eat Last, is a study between military training and Barry Wehmler and a few other examples, but mainly Barry Wehmler. And General Flynn came out with Simon to one of our large operations, and he spent the day talking to our people. He was just, he was with Simon. He sat down with a lot of our people in the company and talked to them. At the end of the day, General Flynn and I sat down. He said, you know what really struck me, Bob? He said, people described it not like a family. They described Barry Wehmler as a family. And so I said, well, it's interesting, Flynn, none of these people are related. Okay. They're not technically family. And we had a really vibrant, thoughtful conversation. What we realized is sometimes, quite often, people use words that have a bigger meaning. In other words, family is in theory through marriage, or, our family tree. But we realized when they were discussing what it felt like to be a part of a culture where they felt valued, they used the word family. Because what is in our language, in our culture, what does family mean? It means the place of ultimate care and safety. So when people describe Wehmler as a family, and General Flynn said, they specifically said, not like a family, but as a family, what they mean is I feel cared for. But they use the word family to express it. I'm not trying to say that we're a family. I'm telling you, our people said to us, we are a family, and they don't mean related. When you come together through a different lens than function, okay, or hierarchy, when you see people through the listening skills as somebody's precious child, you see the beauty in people, and they described it as a family. And so that's where this expression came from. We didn't intend to say we're going to be a family, mom and dad, because some people react, well, that's, like parents, I don't want to treat my kid, my people at work like, hey, That's the wrong kind of parent. Parent is somebody who gives people responsible freedom, trust, and does the right thing, okay, with responsible freedom. I would say to you, family is a word people tell us that they feel. And if you're going to spend 40 hours someplace, wouldn't you like it to spend it in a place where you feel valued, not used to achieve the organizational goals? And that's up to your leaders. That's the environment leaders create. We look at the people through a different lens, not as by title or hierarchy or length of service, but we look at them through a different lens and we say, everybody deserves to know that they matter. My job as a leader is to inspire our people to embrace our responsibility, to go out and serve our community, knowing that they feel cared for here. But again, as Doreen said, if they don't feel trusted in our own office, how on earth can they go out and be the source of trust in our community? Okay. If you don't feel cared for, I mean, seriously, the feedback I've had from the police is police officers are under a lot of stress, but if they can't, but just think of nurses, the life and death situation nurses see every day. So in my opinion, when people don't feel cared for, it is hard to care for others. But when you do show, not just, by presents and birthday presents, but by the way you treat and listen to them, they will go out and serve your communities that you all elect to serve in dramatically different ways. We have the great resignation, not just in policing, they're leaving. School teachers is the highest rate of resignation of any profession right now. They're leaving. And doctors I spoke at a New York museum on doctors and nurses burnout. Every profession is experiencing just what you are experiencing in policing. Why? Why? Because why would you want to work in an organization where you are used, not appreciated, and go home at night drained? I think as leaders, it starts with, do I create an environment where the people I have the privilege of leading feel valued? Okay. And what they do matters. That is our responsibility. Remember, I was interviewed by Washington University professors, organizational development professors some years ago. And after an hour and a half interview, they looked at me and said, Bob, you're the first CEO we have ever talked to that never talked about your product. And I paused a minute and I said, I've been talking about our product for the last hour and a half. It's our people. I won't go to my grave proud of the machinery we build in our company. I'll go to my grave proud of the people that did that caught them completely off guard. So I think a leader's primary responsibility is to make sure that those men and women in your care know that who they are and what they do matters, and that we give them the skills to go out in our community, care for others as they've been cared for within our police. So it starts internally to your leadership in city organizations, in communities, to give people these human skills that our education system does not. And you will create an organization and you will not worry about recruitment. Because again, our company, we've got 13,000 people all over the world. And the number one reason people inquire about our company and join our company is our culture. I'm not sure that that is the case when you look at police departments. I think if any one of your listeners can embrace empathetic listening, recognition, celebration, culture of service, and you can look at your people through a different lens that you have the privilege of leading, recruitment is not going to be your problem. Your problem is going to be, how do you handle all the people that want to work in a place where they feel cared for?
Great points. I'm so glad that other people are saying what we've been saying in this profession for quite some time. And the way you put it out, and for people to take that in a digestible form and be able to use that is so important. I've always said, and I continue to say, that the best strategy for recruitment is a great retention program. That's what you're talking about, right? Creating an environment where people feel safe, valued. And I'll add one other thing, and I think you talk about this, a psychologically safe environment. Not like maybe in harm environment, but a psychologically safe environment where they can raise their hand and say, I don't know something, so they can get help before they do something wrong or make a major decision that's incorrect. And number two, that I need help. I need help. I'm having a mental health issue. I need some help. I need to talk to a counselor. So adding that on, that psychologically safe environment, is so important, because this is so true. How we lead can affect how people live. Again, how we lead can definitely affect how people live. And I think that's so important, That's why leadership is so important right now in our profession. And I think that you've hit on all those topics. As we're closing out here, we have a few minutes left. A little bit about your book. I have it here. I've read it. It matters. Talk a little bit about what your inspiration was with that and why it was so important for you to get your concepts out into a book so people could take it and read it and learn from it.
Well, if you had told me 10 years ago I was going to write a book, I'd say I'd probably land on the moon before I'd write a book. I mean, it was so far outside of my wildest imagination. But people like Simon Sinek, Bill Urey, the McKinsey partners, the Harvard professors came into our organization, experienced our culture, and kept saying, I have never seen anything like this. This is from some of the top thought leaders in the world. And I said, oh my God, what have we got here? And there's one gentleman named Srikumar Rao came in, who is a contributing editor to Forbes magazine. And he spent the 2 days like Simon did, like others did. And he said, Bob, I have interviewed hundreds, if not thousands of CEOs. I've never seen anything like this. You have got to share it with the world. That was the trigger point for us to say, we've been blessed with a message that could heal the brokenness we're all feeling and experiencing in the world. We've got to share it. But we needed a co-author, Raj Sisodio, who wrote the book on Whole Foods, Conscious Capitalism. So the amazing thing to me is we were told when we did this, a typical business book, a normal business book sells 5 to 10,000. We just topped 110,000 copies in 8 languages around the world. That is not a statement of my ability to write a book. It is a statement of the strength of our message that everybody matters. And so the book is a way to share this message with the world, because the world desperate and the world is hungry for this message. So the book has been profoundly meaningful to me because, as the publisher said, it has a long tail. It's not a topical issue. It will be an issue forever. So it makes me incredibly proud that the higher power is blessed me with this message. And my commitment every day to meet people like you is to find ways people to embrace this message so we can heal this poverty of dignity that you're all seeing through your profession.
Thank you, Bob. And I know we have a few minutes left. I'm going to let you just share how people can reach out to you and be a part of what you're doing. And closing thoughts as we leave our listeners with this tremendous message about leadership with Bob Chapman.
What I want your listeners to take away is a sense of hope that they have, maybe as you did driving in your car, heard something today that awakens their heart to a better way of living every day. And that is the lens through which we see others. And I'll give you a really brief example. A McKinsey partner heard me speak, had to leave after my speech to go to the airport, ended up coming back to the office where we're meeting. And I said, I thought you had to leave, McKelly. And he said, I've got to tell you something. I got in a cab after your speech, caught in a traffic jam, irritated with this cab driver, said, just take me back to the office. As I was driving back to the office, I realized that young man in the front of the car was not a cab driver. He was somebody's son. The way I dealt with this young man was dramatically different than I ever would have thought, because I saw the gentleman through a different lens. Your policing officers see people every day. What lens do they see these people? That is what our message is. If you switch the lens to say, are you treating those people you have the privilege of serving in the office, in your community, at your home, as somebody's precious child, with the skills of not judgment, but understanding that the amount of conflict you see will become less, the number of people entering your profession will increase. And I would encourage all of you to elevate the purpose in which you serve your communities, to be a healing power, not simply a source. To me, again, the foundation is to protect our laws and protect our citizens, but the higher power is to be a source of healing and understanding and compassion in our communities, to look at everybody that you serve as somebody's precious child. That is what we've been blessed with. That is the message that's growing around the world. It's not a policing issue. Every part of our society is suffering from the same issue. We don't know how to care for each other because we are not taught to care. We are taught to use people. So I love the opportunity to share with people like you, Neil, the beauty of podcasts. They will live on forever. And my hope is, as we touch your heart, we will awaken the heart of a few of your other listeners so we can begin elevating the purpose of policing in our communities to create a more healing power in our communities through the skills of empathetic listening, recognition, celebration, and service to others. So very much appreciate this opportunity and your interest in our message.
Amen, Pastor Bob. We were taken to church today. And join our Six Pellet Podcast family by following us on your favorite podcast platform. Remember that one person could change the world. Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Bob Chapman. These people can change the world. Imagine what you could do when you go back to your organizations, when you talk about leadership and caring for your people. Until next time, stay safe, healthy, and resilient, and God bless.
We extend our gratitude to Chief Neil Gang and Bob Chapman for leading us through this exploration of wellness and leadership for our extraordinary first responders. This is Shalyn Finstead signing off on behalf of Techne Innovations and the Six Pillar Podcast. Be safe, and thank you for joining us.